Russia has officially declared the US as an enemy. Does this mean war is to begin? While Russia has previously referred to the US as unfriendly and other similar terms, it has never before used the word enemy. The statements made by officials often reflect the country's true beliefs. Could this be a sign of something significant? Let's find out. In a significant shift, Press Secretary Peskov recently labeled the United States as an enemy state, highlighting the escalating tensions between Russia and the US. This development comes in the context of strained relations primarily driven by the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Historically, the Kremlin has referred to Western countries, including the US, using terms like unfriendly or opponents. The new terminology marks a stark departure from previous rhetoric, indicating a potential hardening of Russia's official stance toward the United States. Peskov's remarks reflect growing frustration within the Kremlin over what it perceives as hostile actions and policies by the US. These include sanctions, military aid to Ukraine, and diplomatic isolation. The Kremlin views these measures as part of a broader strategy to weaken Russia and undermine its geopolitical influencing by calling the US an enemy, Russia signaling a readiness to adopt a more confrontational posture in its foreign policy, which could further complicate international efforts to de-escalate the Ukraine conflict and improve bilateral relations. The conflict between the officials of nations and the other countries' actions is not new, but now it looks like the extreme has been hit. Former American intelligence officer Scott Ritter claimed he was barred from visiting St. Petersburg, Russia, in an incident that highlights the deteriorating relations between the two countries. Ritter, who was known for his critical views of U.S. foreign policy and support for Russian perspectives, alleged that Russian border officials confiscated his passport and denied him entry. This incident, while seemingly minor, is emblematic of the broader restrictions on travel and communication between Americans and Russians amid the current geopolitical tensions. Ritter suggested that the U.S. the State Department might have played a role in the incident, speculating that his exclusion was orchestrated to prevent him from engaging with Russian media and the public. This episode highlights the complex interplay of intelligence, diplomacy, and media narratives in the context of U.S.-Russian relations. It also raises questions about the extent to which governments are willing to go to control information and influence public opinion during times of conflict. Responding to the incident, Dmitry Peskov described the move to prevent Scott Ritter from entering Russia as part of a broader campaign aimed at stopping Americans from communicating with Russia. Peskov attributed this to Ritter's background as an intelligence officer, suggesting that his exclusion was a precautionary measure. The Kremlin's decision to block Ritter's entry reflects its sensitivity to the activities of foreign nationals, particularly those with intelligence backgrounds within its borders. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Africa's geopolitics, economy, and changing landscape. Let's continue now. Peskov's comments also highlighted the Kremlin's concern about the flow of information and the potential for foreign influence. By preventing Ritter from entering the country, Russia may be seeking to control the narrative and limit the spread of viewpoints that could be seen as supportive of its adversaries. This incident and Peskov's remarks illustrate the increasingly restrictive environment for cross-border communication and the growing distrust between Russia and the United States. Until recently, neither Dmitry Peskov nor President Vladimir Putin had explicitly referred to the US or other Western countries as enemies. Instead, the Kremlin has typically used terms like unfriendly states or opponents to describe countries that it perceives as adversarial. This shift in language is significant, as it indicates a change in the Kremlin's official stance and a possible escalation in its rhetoric. The use of the term enemy suggests a more confrontational and antagonistic posture toward the US, signaling change in language could have broader implications for the US-Russia relations, signaling a potential hardening of positions and a reduced willingness to engage in dialogue. It also reflects the growing polarization and the deepening of the geopolitical divide between Russia and the West. Scott Ritter, a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer, has a complex and controversial background. Known for his outspoken views and frequent appearances in Russian media, Ritter often supports Kremlin perspectives, particularly the Ukraine conflict. However, his past also includes a conviction for sex offenses, which has marred his reputation and complicated his public persona. Ritter's bearing from Russia can be seen within the broader context of his contentious relationship with U.S. authorities and his vocal criticism of American foreign policy. His claim that the U.S. State Department orchestrated his exclusion from Russia adds a layer of intrigue to the incident, suggesting a possible attempt to control dissenting voices and influence the narrative surrounding the Ukraine conflict. Anyways, now the tension has reached an extreme. Russia trusts no one from the U.S., and so does the U.S. How does Biden's authorization play a role in this? The shift in the Kremlin's language coincided with President Joe Biden's authorization for Ukraine to use American-supplied weapons to strike targets within Russia. This development marks a significant escalation in U.S. support for Ukraine and signals a more direct involvement in the conflict. Biden's decision reflects the calculation to bolster Ukraine's defensive capabilities and put additional labeling on Russia. The timing of the Kremlin's statement suggests a direct response to this increased U.S. support for Ukraine. By labeling the U.S. as an enemy, Russia may be seeking to galvanize domestic support and justifying more aggressive actions in the conflict. This escalation in both rhetoric and military involvement underscores the high stakes and the potential for further deterioration in U.S.-Russia relations. In March, Dmitry Peskov stated that Russia opposed disrespect towards President Putin, but claimed there was no anti-American sentiment in Moscow. This statement was made in the context of ongoing tensions and was likely an attempt to moderate the rhetoric and maintain the possibility of future diplomatic engagement. Peskov's remarks suggested a desire to distinguish between the actions of the U.S. government and the American people, indicating a more nuanced approach. However, the favorite shift in language suggests that this more moderate stance has been abandoned in favor of a more confrontational approach. The change reflects the dynamic and rapidly evolving nature of U.S.-Russia relations and the impact of ongoing developments in the Ukraine conflict on diplomatic rhetoric. In January, President Vladimir Putin referred to Western elites as Russia's real enemies and described Ukraine as a tool used by these elites. This statement highlighted the Kremlin's view of the Ukraine conflict as part of a broader struggle against Western influence and intervention. Putin's remarks highlight the ideological and geopolitical dimensions of the conflict, framing it as a battle for sovereignty and influence. Putin's characterization of Western elites as the real enemies aligns with the recent rhetorical shift by the Kremlin. By focusing on the role of Western elites, the Kremlin can justify its actions in Ukraine and rally domestic support against perceived external threats. This framing also delegitimizes Western actions and narratives, positioning Russia as a defender of national sovereignty against external aggression. After such a statement, should we anticipate a war? Maybe not soon, but shortly. Despite the harsh rhetoric, both the United States and Russia are aware of the catastrophic consequences of a direct military confrontation between two nuclear-armed states. The concept of mutually assured destruction may have served as a significant deterrent against full-scale war. The current tensions are more likely to manifest in proxy conflicts, such as the ongoing war in Ukraine, rather than direct military engagement. The U.S. and Russia may continue to support opposing sides in various global hotspots without engaging each other directly. Despite strained relations, there are ongoing diplomatic efforts to manage and de-escalate tensions. Communication channels between military and diplomatic officials of both countries remain crucial for preventing misunderstandings and accidental escalations. Both countries have substantial economic and political interests that would be severely impacted by war. The global economic repercussions and internal political stability concerns act as strong deterrents against initiating direct conflict. Throughout the Cold War, the U.S. and the Soviet Union frequently engaged in hostile rhetoric and proxy wars without escalating to direct military conflict. The current situation, while serious, is not unprecedented in this regard. Do you think in the future Russia and America will have a war, or are we already witnessing a proxy? Let us know in the comments section. Can the situation get any worse? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: African politics, economy, and increasing power. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.
Tell us what you think in the comment section. Like and share the video, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our African videos. It's the best way to support us.